Hey guys, it's Cohen with another installment of Own It, Never Falking, Seen It. And since this month, of course, is October, I have decided that I'm going to dedicate this entire month to strictly just horror films, starting off with a film that I really did not have any plans on reviewing whatsoever, and that is a 2016 film that somehow I actually did not get to see, and that is The Boy. And what The Boy is essentially about is we center on the character of Greta. She is this woman who basically takes this job as a nanny in an English village, but it's not nearly as, it's not a normal nanny job because she's not tending to a child. She's tending to this doll. This doll basically is, he basically, their son, this couple's son had died. He drowned, and pretty much they have kept their son alive in this doll. They treat him like he is a, he is a physical being and that he's able to move around. At first, Greta's just going along with it, thinking that, they're just grieving over their son and this is their way of kind of coping with it. However, as stuff starts to go on, she starts to realize that this doll is starting to move on its own and very well could be alive, and that's really all I'm going to say. And look, that is actually one of the things I will give this film, because unlike other horror films, this film is relatively small scale. There's really only two major actors to talk about, and I will say, one of the best parts of this movie, without a doubt, is Lauren Cohen, who I think actually gave a really subdued performance here. What I love about the character of Greta is that she actually is very smart. She has a very traumatic past, and you can see how she's trying to get away from it by taking this job as a nanny, but also she very slowly is starting to uncover things. There aren't a lot of moments where they're like, oh, what are you doing? Or what's wrong with this character? Like, she really isn't that much of an idiot. She's actually very intelligent with the way she goes about this situation, and I think she did a very good job in this film. There are plenty of times where she could have easily been very over the top, but like I said, it's actually a very quiet performance, and I really did love what we got from her here. You know, the only thing I've seen her in prior to this, of course, is The Walking Dead, but this really does show the range that she does have as an actress. Of course, she has done things like Mile 22, but I really did like her a lot in this film. Would love to see her as a lead in a better horror film, because I do think she did a very good job here. And then the only other person to talk about is Rupert Evers, who I also really liked here. You know, he has a lot of history with this house and the relatives, and you see how a lot of this information, starts to get Greta on board with what's really going on, give her sense of what's actually happening, and I really did like seeing these two grow closer. I thought they worked very well together, and like I said, the acting here overall is really good. But now I really want to get to the directing and the writing, because that was really the thing I was dreading in this film. Because if you guys don't know, the directing in this movie is by William Brent Bell, who directed my favorite horror movie of all time, The Devil Inside. And if you know me, you know I say that with complete sarcasm, because that's actually the worst horror film these eyes have ever seen, at least modern horror film. I think the worst horror film I've seen is probably Saw the Final Chapter, but The Devil Inside is definitely the worst of the decade for sure. I have yet to see a horror film that is as bad as that one, and The Devil Inside is just a horribly put together film, so I was really worried when he was announced the director, but surprisingly, I do think he did a really good job here. What he does a very good job with in this movie is giving you this very gothic sense of what's going on here. This is, like I said, a much more quiet, frightening film than you really would expect, and I think his directing was pretty good here. The backstory in particular, I actually really did get invested in. There's some really good drama going on surrounding this family and surrounding our lead character, Greta, and I do think he did a very good job setting that up. And I will admit there were some relatively, there were some creepy moments, throughout this movie, sporadically, that did actually frighten me a bit and maybe did creep me out. But I don't think this film works as a horror film solely because I wasn't really all that scared by it. And look, again, I do appreciate the fact that he doesn't just go on, utilize jump scares. Like, it doesn't really rely on jump scares. I can't really recall of a lot of jump scares in this film. And sure, there are definitely horror cliches, but this is a film that is much more atmospheric than most of its kind, especially for a January horror film. And I do think he did a good job with giving you that sense of fear and that sense of discomfort, and I did like what he was able to do there. In terms of the writing, that's where this film really does falter for me. Because, like I said, I did think the setup was actually quite good. You have this couple, and obviously they're very much crushed over the loss of their son. They kind of let Greta, look after this doll, acting as if it's alive. And at first, she's just kind of going along with it. But as the film goes on, she starts to realize that, holy shit, Brahms might actually still be alive. And I really like getting into that story overall. Again, there's not a lot to the story. That's the thing. It's a relatively simple story. Most of the movie is just her tending after this doll, finding some information after, here and there, but also, like I said, trying to deal with her own trauma, which she actually has been through a significant amount of, and I did like getting into her character. She's someone that is very easy to root for, and they did a good job with that here. They didn't just make her the every woman. There actually is a purpose for why she's doing this, and again, a lot of horror films don't put thought into that, and that's something I actually really did love about this film. I thought the character development was especially strong with Greta. She does go through a pretty great arc, and that's something that I really did enjoy about her character in this film. Again, as far as everyone else, there's not really a ton to say in terms of their characters. They do what they need to do for the most part, but the writing here, the backstory of who Brahms really is, and the stuff that she has to do, going as far as to, give him all these verbal commands and things like that, it really does start to unsettle you, and it's very slow moving in that sense, and that's something I really enjoyed about this film, is, like I said, just how slow moving it really was, and it did at points remind me of like a Hitchcockian thriller, where it really does take a lot of time to get you into this story. And mind you, this film is only an hour and 38 minutes long, so it's not like it's like takes a while to get into, but it does take a little bit to actually get into the central plot of this movie, and I actually really do appreciate that. A lot of films would just try to go right for those jump scares, and this film really doesn't do that, and that's something I again, really enjoyed a lot. The visual style also is very good to this film. It's very cryptic looking, and it just gives you this very unsettling sense, and I really liked the look of this film. The detail on Brahms I thought was very good, and there's some really great shots in this film that I don't really want to say too much, but I know the movie came out like 2 years ago, but there are some really great shots here, and again, it just gave the world build, not the world building, but like the look of the house in general. It's just very creepy, and it's a place that you really don't want to stay in, and they did a very good job with, again, unsettling you in that way. The score was pretty good. I did enjoy the score here, and the editing. I will admit, the first 20 or 30 minutes was kind of dragging for me a bit. It was hard to get into the story. However, throughout most of it, I actually was on board with it. I actually was into the story for the most part, and that's something that I was, again, very surprised by how into this story I really was, and again, I think they did a good job with that overall. Where this film really does falter for me is the twist in this movie, which a lot of people have brought up, and look, like I said, I think the mythology is very good here. The film isn't particularly scary, but for the most part, I was enjoying it. I'm like, okay, this is actually a pretty solid film that is actually setting up this really interesting story between Greta and between Brahms, and it was very interesting seeing where it was going. And then the twist happens, and look, in theory, it's a cool idea where they end up going with this twist. It's one of those things where, like, oh, maybe that can work, but the way it's executed and the way it's fits into the story, it's very quick. It all happens in the span of maybe 5 minutes, and even at that, there's, once it happens, there's only about like 7 minutes of movie left for them to really tie up all these loose ends. And when you really think about it, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And it just didn't really work for me overall. Again, it's a cool idea. I get what they were trying to do, but nothing in this film suggests the twist in this movie. You really don't get the sense that that's actually what's going on here. And for me to buy into this twist, there is a ton of stuff that needed to be explained, and they really don't give you that leg. They really don't lay you the groundwork to really explain this twist, and I think they really need to do a much better job with that. Also, it does come across as very sequel-baity. The final shot of this movie especially just made me feel like they wanted to make a sequel. It was like blatantly trying to make one, and I'm glad it didn't happen because I honestly think this movie is best as a standalone. I don't want to see A Boy 2. I think the movie works best out on its own, and that's something that, again, is very good. The Boy overall is a very small-scale film. It's much different from other horror films, especially ones that come out in January. It doesn't rely a lot on jump scares. It is very creative, but it has a very hard time sticking the landing and really never scared me all that much. I was maybe a little bit creeped out. I do think Lauren Cohen gives a strong performance, but it's nothing I really would see again. It's very forgettable, and in general, I just wasn't really the biggest fan of it. And I am going to give The Boy overall a C+. Also, one last announcement, guys. I meant to say this earlier, but if you guys know, my good friend Adam Haskell has started up a podcast called the Jack Podcast that I'm also doing with my friend Jackson Fulcher. We are 2 episodes into it, and it's going really well so far, but I really would love if you guys do check it out. I've always wanted to be on some sort of podcast, and like I said, it's been going pretty strong so far. I think we've done a really good job, and we already are really getting into the flow of things, so I really would appreciate if you guys do check it out. It's something that I am very happy to be a part of, and I really do hope it continues to go strong, so definitely check us out over there. I'll leave a link to Adam's channel down below, but it definitely, if you can, just try to give it a look, because I do think it is quite good what we're doing. So yeah, like I said, there are things in here that I did enjoy, but for the most part, it's a very disposable horror film that I just wasn't really all that into. So yeah, to the girl that recommended this movie, yeah, you're getting this Blu-ray. Hope you enjoy it. I'm sorry I was not a fan. But if you have seen The Boy, let me know what you guys thought of it. Would love to hear your thoughts on it. I have a lot more Owen and Falking scene and horror reviews coming this month. Definitely look forward to that. I got Cabin in the Woods coming this Friday. Definitely look forward to that one. I'm very excited to finally watch the film. I've wanted to see that for years, and I'm finally going to see it because Bad Times at El Royale is coming out. But that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. See you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.